You're listening to The Overwhelmed Brain. Get $50 towards select mattresses by visiting casper.com/brain. Use the promo code BRAIN at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Are you annoyed by affirmations? Are you tired of that same old, rehashed personal growth advice that all seems to boil down to, think positively and all your problems will go away? If affirmations feel like lies and positive thinking feels like denial, then I want you to get ready. The Overwhelmed Brain is here to help you create the life you want now. Hello and welcome to The Overwhelmed Brain. I am your host, personal empowerment coach Paul Coliani, and I am here to help you increase your emotional intelligence, strengthen your self-worth and self-esteem, and empower you so that you can make decisions that are right for you. Everything I talk about on this show is my personal opinion and is meant for informational and educational purposes only. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your medical treatment. All right, I received an email from someone who attends Al-Anon. That's the Alcoholics Anonymous arm that works with family and friends of alcoholics. And if you've never been to any 12-step meetings, you might be surprised to find out that a lot of what they teach there is sort of what I teach here. I didn't know that either until someone pointed it out in, I think, Reddit or something. Somebody commented that I teach a lot of the 12-step stuff, and I didn't even know I did. So I find it interesting. You know, it's all about personal empowerment, honoring yourself. There may be some things that are different in that program and programs like that. But for the most part, if you're in any 12-step program, it can be very helpful. In fact, I received an email from someone in a 12-step program, or has been doing Al-Anon for quite a number of years. And I'm going to read it to you because he has a great description of what addiction is like and what addicts go through, probably on a daily basis. So it's helpful to know what they go through and what it can be like, so that we develop some compassion for them. And I'm not saying that you need to be compassionate for people that are doing bad behavior that is creating a toxic environment for you. I mean, there are addicts that keep to themselves and do their own thing and don't affect you in any way, and then there are those addicts that do affect you, and you need to take care of yourself in those situations. But Al-Anon is one of those programs that help you do that. Let me just read this email and you'll get a better idea if you're not familiar with the 12-step program in general. This is from someone I'm going to call Bill. He says, "Hello, this is a reply to a segment I heard on one of your episodes called Those Think Positively People." Yes, I had an episode a while back that talks about all those people that tell you to think positively. First, I want to say your podcast is amazing and I love it. I listen to it consistently on my iPhone every night. Thank you, Bill. Glad you're listening. So I have spent the last 4 years in Al-Anon and have many friends in AA. I understand your thought on how a small percentage of people use positive thinking to avoid problems. However, positive thinking is a tool that the program uses to help us focus on what's more important, our serenity. We can't fix the problem. We can't control the problem. So the issue is really what is causing a person to lose focus on what's more important, happiness, or in many cases for the addict, sobriety. We Al-Anons are not like most people who have normal thought patterns. We obsess over the smallest issues. We make mountains out of molehills, and the addicts will turn to self-medicating, drugs or alcohol, to cope with the problem. We don't have the skills to resolve a problem or a negative thought and just move on. It stays with us day and night, at work and in bed, in our minds and in our dreams, to the point of insanity. So when there's too much negativity around us, we internalize it, like you said, and that turns into depression or an explosion. The program teaches us to detach with love and to really consider what's important to us. Because for me, when I hear something negative, I want to fix it. And if I can't fix it, I get frustrated, and on and on. For the addict, staying sober is the most important thing. Just staying sober for today. Taking life one day at a time. Most of us were not raised in healthy families where you learn to openly discuss these matters, and as adults, it's hard to change something you've been doing for 30 to 40 to 50 years. So step 12, if you work the steps properly, you start learning how to engage in positive and negative conversations. But it takes years of practice, which makes it okay for people to experience these periods of their life where only positivity is allowed. It normally passes, and the person will grow, evolve, and change when they are ready. Thanks again. You do a wonderful job. Through Al-Anon, I have learned to deal with negative thinkers and situations. Cheers, Bill. Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you for this information. Thanks for listening to the show and sharing this with me. I don't have too much to comment on about it. I have a few things to comment on, but since you're not really asking a question, you're just sharing information, I wanted to share this with the world, just in case they're dealing with an addict in their life, whatever they're addicted to. You didn't mention like sex addiction and other types of addiction, but there are Al-Anon groups for that as well. So I highly recommend this type of group for those of you who don't know how to deal with the addict in their life, because you'll hear from other people dealing with the same thing you are. There's nothing worse than feeling like you're alone in what you're going through. So check it out if you think that's something that might help you out. It's al-anon.org. And Bill, I just want to make a couple comments on what you said. Because you were referencing those think positively people, just a quick comment on that. I highly encourage positive thinking. I highly encourage optimistic thinking as long as you're not stuffing down negative thought. Stuffing down and repressing negative thought is what causes those explosions that you talk about, or depression, just like you said. So I'm not sure how the program does it, but I know that positive thinking, when you use it as a form of denial, to deny what's happening in your life instead of address what's happening in your life, that can be damaging. However, I'm sure the program addresses that, which is important, because one of the things that people do when they become addicted is try to bury the pain or numb the pain by taking drugs or alcohol or having other gambling or porn addiction or something like that. Although porn and gambling might be in a different category, because drugs and alcohol are actually designed to have a direct effect. They do something very specific. And my concern with anyone who does drugs or alcohol is that they are using it to keep their pain. And even though it makes them feel good in the moment, the pain doesn't go away, which means they have to drink or take drugs again. And if that's the case, then the addiction never stops. Because why are you addicted? You keep doing what you do because of the reward that you get. What's the reward? The reward is not feeling the pain or the upset or whatever's going on in your life. And I'm making some generalizations here. There's all kinds of reasons that people drink and do drugs and get addicted. But in the case of positive thinking, just make sure that when you use positive thinking, that it's not to bury something that's been unresolved. It's always best to try to resolve that, heal through it, talk about it with people, express it, because a lot of people don't like to express what's going on in their life. They think they just need to bury it and don't burden other people with their problems. They think they should just keep it to themselves, because expressing it to someone else, there's fear in that for some reason, fear of the consequence of what might happen if you express that. So that's my only concern about positive thinking, is when it's used as a way to deny what's really happening in you. And if you never address what's happening to you, then that stuff stays in there and the addiction continues. And like I said, in some cases. And another thing you said, Bill, you said, if I can't fix it, I get frustrated. You were talking about when you hear something negative, you want to fix it. I totally get this. When I was married, when my wife would talk about something that was wrong in her life, I wanted to fix it. I wanted to come up with a solution and help her resolve the problem. And she finally told me, sometimes I just want to vent. I don't want a solution. And it's hard to be a fixer when you have someone that is telling you a problem and you know the solution for it, yet they don't want to hear it. So I learned at that time that it's not always good to fix things, even though it sounds strange to say it, but it's true. It's not always good to fix things when someone's not looking for the solution. They just want to vent. So you may or may not mean that, but that's how I can relate to that, is that when I was married, that's exactly what happened, is that my wife had a problem and I wanted to fix it. And eventually she got sick of me trying to fix things for her. And so when she told me to stop doing that, we got along better. And then when she wanted me to fix something, she would ask me, hey, can you help me out with this? And that became a much better relationship. That took out the rescuer in me and allowed me to be functional again instead of dysfunctional, always imposing my help on someone when they weren't asking for it. Because imagine this. Let's just say that you are putting together a puzzle. Let's just say you like puzzles. And you have this puzzle on the table, and you put together, 30 or 40 pieces out of 1,000, some big puzzle. And then someone comes along and says, oh, I can help you with that. And they put together almost the entire puzzle for you by the end of the day. And you look at it and you go, oh, I guess I'm done with this puzzle. And they say, no, there's a few more pieces left. But now the puzzle is done, and you get no fulfillment of doing the puzzle, which leaves you sort of, empty, unfulfilled in some way. And that's what can happen, is that you have problems throughout life, and you're venting these problems to someone else, but you're working on a solution in yourself, but someone comes along and says, here's the solution, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do. And whether they're right or wrong, it takes away your power. It can take away your power. And when that happens, when you are with someone who's always trying to rescue you, you feel like you have no more, independent thought. You feel like you don't have much purpose or meaning because they're doing everything for you. And you're not learning anything new because now they're doing the thing for you and you don't have to do anything. So why bother learning how to do it yourself? So it becomes very dysfunctional when you're with someone who doesn't necessarily want your help unless they ask for it. It's just something good to know. And I'm not saying that, Bill, you need to stop helping people. I'm just saying that this is how I can relate, and this is what it can lead to. And I absolutely understand where you are. If you can't fix it, I get frustrated because I can feel that way. I see the problem. I can help somebody with the problem, but it's taken a long time for me to just step back and go, I'm not going to offer my help all the time unless somebody is looking for it. That's like spam, isn't it? You get spam in your email, and it's somebody wanting to solve one of your problems. And sometimes it's not your problem, but they just hope that if they send 1 billion spam emails, that it will be someone's problem. And you get all these offers for helping you, yet you didn't ask for it, and you don't want it. Yet it's there if you need it. So you get inundated with spam, and then you're sick of it, and you don't want it anymore. And then pretty soon you don't want any marketing or advertising anymore. You just get to that point where you don't want people to give you a solution to something that may or may not be a problem in your life. You want to be able to look for a solution, keep your power, and find the right one that resonates with you. So I totally get that. So I think that's what happens for people. That's what happened with my wife, is that she wanted to be able to vent and express and not necessarily get the solution, especially before she hasn't finished venting or expressing. So I learned a lot in that time of my life. And then finally, Bill, you said that there are periods of time in the 12-step program where only positivity is allowed. And I get this. If you're around negative people all the time and you're just in this toxic environment, you just need to get away and get around toxic people. I have a client that's around a lot of toxic people. She was around a lot of toxic people all her life. And this is one of those instances where I just want to say, you need to run away from all your problems. I would never say that, but it almost gets to that point where you have so many toxic people in your life that they are the problem. In my last episode, I think it was, I talked about how there is a common denominator where everyone's a problem in your life. It's probably you that are the problem. Well, it can be you that's the problem because you allow these people into your life, but it can also be you that's the problem because you are a challenge to be with. Sometimes that can be true. But what happens when everyone around you really is toxic? And no matter what you do and no matter how hard you try, they're still there. You can't get away. They call you, they email you, they arrive at your house. They just keep showing up. Then you have to figure out, what am I going to do to get away from these people? The advice, run away from all your problems, might be good advice. So that has some stipulations and consequences, but that's because you're running away from things outside of you, not inside of you. I think when we hear, don't run away from all your problems, we're being told not to run away from some unhealed or unresolved emotional stuff going on inside of us. But I have no problem when the nuclear power plant is melting down and you need to run like hell to get away from your problems, to run away. Too toxic. You will get burned. So anyway, Bill, thanks so much for sharing this. I wanted to share it with the world because I do believe it's a good program. I know people who have been in the program, both in AA and Al-Anon, and it can be life-changing. So there are more things in the world besides this show that are life-changing. So check it out. We'll be right back. Have you heard of Casper? I'll tell you what, you'll want to know more about this sleep brand as soon as possible. With 2018, I think you should resolve to get a little bit more rest and relaxation. How does that sound? And if not, why not? After all, think of rest as the platform you land on after a tough, stressful day. Casper creates expertly designed products to help you get the best rest one night at a time. If you haven't checked out Casper products yet, well, let me fill you in. Imagine you walk into your bedroom, turn the lights down, winding down the day, and letting all the tension go. Now imagine there are two beds in front of you. One of them feels like, a cheap hotel mattress. Hard, springy, squeaky, and more like a trampoline. Now look over at the Casper mattress. A sleep brand cleverly designed to mimic your body's curves, providing multiple supportive memory foams and a breathable design that helps you sleep cool while regulating your body temperature throughout the night. It's that quality sleep surface with the right amounts of sink and bounce. Now look back at that old squeaky mattress again, and then at Casper. Which one would you choose? I know which one I'll choose every time. With over 20,000 reviews and an average of 4.8 stars across Casper, Amazon, and Google, Casper is the one I'm always going to choose. Casper has the original Casper mattress, but also the Wave and the Essential, each with features designed with you in mind. Check out Casper's pillows and sheets too. You'll find all of their sleep products comfortable, affordable, and delivered to your door for free in the US and Canada. And did I mention that you can sleep on a Casper mattress for 100 nights risk-free? That's right, they give you free delivery, you sleep on it for 100 nights, and then they pick it up for free if you don't like it. But I know you're going to love it. And you're going to love this even more. You get $50 toward the purchase of a select mattress when you visit casper.com/brain. And make sure to use the promo code BRAIN during checkout too. And I want you to check it out. casper.com/brain. Terms and conditions apply. As you lay on one for the first time, I think you'll agree that Casper is not only the internet's favorite mattress, but yours too. All right, welcome back. I'm going to read you an email that I received as a response to one of my newsletters that I sent out a couple months back, and it was regarding the Vegas shooting. If you aren't familiar with that, I'm sure the whole world is, but just in case, there were about 50 plus people that were shot by a gunman that just started shooting people randomly, and he killed quite a number of people. It was a very sad day, and I wrote my newsletter based on that and suffering. And I'm going to read you the newsletter that I sent out and also this listener's response, and then I'll make a comment on it. The newsletter goes like this. I'm sure you were just as shocked and hurt as I was when you heard about the Vegas shooting. Many people ask, what is the meaning of this senseless act? I have many thoughts on this question, but I think it all boils down to one comment. Any one person can make another person suffer. This murderer took away so much happiness in the world that day, and that happiness may not return easily for many people. If there is some sort of lesson or meaning in any of this, I walk away with a greater perspective of how much time we really all have on this planet when something like this can come out of nowhere. But I'm not fooled into thinking that we have to walk around in fear. I'm convinced that when this and other terrible things happen in the world, we actually become compelled to walk around with more love and compassion for our family, friends, and neighbors on this earth. That doesn't mean we deny the existence of bad news and only see the good. After all, we must hold the guilty accountable. But tragedies like this are an opportunity to remind us to take advantage of the time we all have together. Remember 9/11? Of course you do. We saw so much death and felt so much pain during that time. We also saw the entire world come together, supporting each other and showing compassion like never before. It's not that people's compassion wasn't there previously. It was just brought out more powerfully than ever. It's true that any one person can make another person suffer, but any one person can make another person feel loved and supported too. Imagine if you felt loved and supported by everyone you met every day. Would that make a difference in your life? Would that change how you feel most of the time? I know there are a lot of crazy people in the world, but remember, those are the ones that are highlighted in news stories to make us believe the world is falling apart. I believe that for every single crazy person out there, there are a million normal people living life the best they can, loving and supporting others. Now, whether I'm right or wrong about that doesn't matter. It's what I believe. And that belief helps me to walk around with more compassion and love and less fear. Reminding those who may be suffering that they are loved and supported doesn't necessarily take away their suffering, but it can give it some meaning. And who knows, it might even make them feel pretty darn good too. You are important to me, and I am very grateful for you. So that was my newsletter, and I did receive quite a few responses to that newsletter because some people had a problem with the idea that we can make anyone suffer. And this particular person articulated it very well, and I'm going to read it to you and I'll comment on it. He says, "Paul, thanks for these thoughts, and I'm wondering if you might reconsider. I believe that no one can make anyone feel anything. We create our feelings in response to our thoughts and beliefs. The alternative is to live as victims, struggling to survive all the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. As the saying goes, pain is mandatory, suffering is optional. All the meaning in things is added by us. If we choose to make things mean that we have to suffer, feel bad, live in fear, etc., that is a choice, although usually an unconscious one. And when one becomes aware that the meaning comes from the inside, not from, quote, out there, then we have a choice about changing our thoughts and beliefs. Without this awareness, we will continue to suffer and live as victims. It is also impossible to make someone feel loved and supported if they believe they are unlovable and don't deserve support. Their beliefs will filter out and discard all evidence to the contrary. I enjoy your work and look forward to seeing and hearing your teachings. Thanks for listening. Best, David." All right, David, thank you so much for sharing that. And for anyone else who replied to that newsletter, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. That was very well written. And it did make me think about this subject a little bit more. And I'm going to comment on this because I've gone back and forth with this. And I think I've come to something more conclusionary. I'm not saying it's the final thing I'll ever think. You might be able to change my mind again. But one of the things that you said is suffering is optional. And I can't agree with that. Now, I've had an episode on pain and suffering, and I do talk about suffering being a choice, suffering being the drama that comes with the pain. And I don't mean to downplay the suffering. I just mean that when you feel pain, you can choose to suffer from that pain by staying the victim and allowing the pain to overcome you so that you don't do anything in life. And there's more to that, but that's the gist of it, is that the suffering stops you from keeping your power. And what David is saying is that we have a choice to suffer. And the reason I disagree with that is because I don't think a 6-year-old believes they have a choice. I don't think that most children believe they have a choice. Suffering is and can be taught. Yes, it can come from parents. It can come from adult role models when we're children. And then when we grow old enough and we do start making more conscious choices, then we might see that, hey, suffering is more drama, and I'm only doing it to get attention, or I'm only doing it because I don't think I have power in my life. I don't think I have any control in my life. That may be part of the suffering aspect. But to a child, I don't think suffering is necessarily a choice. Now, what you might retort with, David, is that you say, well, I don't mean children. I mean when we grow up and we have choices and we're going to experience pain. And what do we do with that pain? Do we allow it to overcome us and now we stop the forward momentum in life? Or do we suffer and stay stagnant in this rut? So what I say to that is some of us are stuck in that child emotional trigger state. And what I mean by that is sometimes things happen to us in childhood that cause us so much suffering, any type of trauma, neglect, or abuse, that we take that emotional trigger with us throughout life. I mean, this is what happens. This is what emotional triggers are all about, is that we are triggered by something that someone says or does, and we can regress to that child state of fear, sadness, upset, emotional pain. And when we're in that childlike state, it really feels like we have no choice. And so some people do get stuck in this space of suffering because they feel like they have no choice. Now that is until someone comes along and says, you do have a choice and here's what you can do. I mean, that's what I try to do on this show, is to tell you that you are empowered to create the life you want. But I also say that sometimes your choices are limited, and sometimes you will feel like you have no choice. And when you feel like you have no choice, for example, a person who has a disabled child and commits to take care of that disabled child for the rest of their life. And this disabled child grows into an adult, and this other adult has to take care of this disabled child their entire life. And that person will feel like they have no choice because that is their child. They've committed to it. And I look at that as a time when maybe you don't feel like you have a choice. Because what is the choice? You give your child to the state, you give up your child to another couple to take care of, or an institution. I mean, these are all things that, yes, I suppose that could be a choice, but how many parents would do that? I mean, there are some parents that would do that because they need to. But for some parents, it's no choice. They would say, I have no choice. That's my child. I'm going to take care of this child for the rest of my life. That's how I feel about animals. I've committed that whenever I take care of an animal, I will take care of an animal for the rest of its life. And it's just a commitment I made to myself, and I create the no choice scenario. Now, that doesn't mean I don't really have no choice. It just means that I've chosen to live that way. But I do side with you, David, that there is always a choice when you're an adult, but you may not like the choice that you have to make. Just like the parent with a child that becomes an adult and needs caring for the rest of their life, the adult knows that there are choices, but they will not make those choices available to them, so they put themselves in a place of acceptance. I accept that there is no choice. Therefore, I can either choose to suffer, which might mean the story involved with any of the pain, or I can be like C-3PO on Star Wars and say, this is my lot in life. And so they accept the hand they've been given. Now, don't confuse my comments on having a disabled child as a burden or a problem, because what I'm saying is that normally having a disabled child that grows into adult that you have to take care of for the rest of their life can be a challenge. And yes, there could be a sense of suffering involved, but don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about how much the parent loves the child, how much the parent wants the child. I'm talking about the extra effort it takes when you have that kind of responsibility. Believe me, I know 2 family members that have had to take care of children and is currently taking care of one and will be taking care of this particular person for the rest of their life. So I understand the challenges involved and how it can be more than you expected when you had children. So that's all I mean by that. But let me come back and just say this, is that sometimes suffering is not optional. And the reason I say that is because not everyone is built like Viktor Frankl, which I think it's A Man's Search for Meaning, where he was held in a Nazi concentration camp and he was made to suffer at their hands. And he came to a new meaning in life and was able to feel compassion for those who were holding him captive. Some people can't come to that place, and they really feel like there is no choice but to suffer. In the book Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl said that the prisoners that identified a purpose in life to feel positively about and didn't focus on their pain and subsequently focus on their suffering were more likely to have a better outcome, or more likely not to perish. And he said that the way a prisoner imagined his future affected his mortality, basically. And in that situation, perhaps there is a choice to suffer, perhaps not. It would be great if we all had the ability to do so. What David is saying is that we all have the choice to do so. And I think it's hard to tell someone who just lost their husband, their wife, their child, that they have a choice to suffer. Because I am a full believer that it's okay to suffer and express the pain inside of you in some way, shape, or form to get it out. As long as you're not repressing that suffering. When you repress the suffering, that's when it becomes a problem. And on top of that, I don't like the idea that suffering is always a choice. The reason being is because some people are in a position in life where they are truly suffering. And if you tell them suffering is a choice, it can feel very minimizing to the person going through it. For example, if I told all my clients that lost somebody they loved, that their suffering was their choice, it might come across as insensitive. It might come across as me not understanding what they're going through. And they may bypass the grieving process that I think is necessary. After you lose someone you love, I think a grieving process is absolutely necessary. I think sometimes suffering is necessary. This is, I realize this is polar opposite of what we're taught. Buddhism teaches and philosophy teaches that suffering is optional. But I really believe that sometimes suffering is necessary in certain circumstances. If you're in an abusive relationship and you choose to stay in that abusive relationship, I would say that suffering is a choice then. It may feel like you have no choice. It may feel like, well, if I leave this person, I have no finances, I have no place to stay, I have no car, I have no this, I have no that. It may feel like you have no choice. But the truth is, you do have a choice, you just don't like it. You just don't want to be in that situation. Yeah, but I might die if I leave that situation. Yes, it may feel that way, and it is possible. Anything is possible. But I look at, you do have a choice to stay or leave an abusive relationship. But yes, there are consequences. I understand that too. But it doesn't mean you don't have a choice. And I think that's David's main message here, is that you should always see the choice to suffer or not when you have choices that you may not want to make. Even the choice to grieve is there. I agree with you, David. Suffering is optional, even when you lose someone you love. But I don't think suffering should always only be optional. This is my opinion. It goes against the grain. I know it does. But I've learned that sometimes suffering is a great way to exhaust some negative emotional energy inside of you. Just like something I mentioned, a few episodes ago, where you come home from work and you're really upset about so-and-so coworker, and you just want to gripe about it. You want to bring up the drama. Oh, you'll never believe what Joe did. He stole all the donuts, and everyone went in there and all the donuts were gone. And we went to Joe's desk and he had all these half-eaten donuts. He didn't even finish the donuts. And so you're like, oh, you're just in the drama, in the suffering. I'm just saying this is a minor example of suffering. But you're feeling it. You're emotionally charged about it. And then you come home and you gripe about it. And then you get it all out. And then suddenly you feel better. And at that point, I feel suffering was a good thing. So, David, I realize that there are different definitions of suffering. I'm just going by my definition. So we may not actually disagree at the level I'm talking about, but maybe we do. I don't know. Now, I will say this. In your letter, you do point out something that I'm going to have to agree with and take back in my newsletter. Not that I can. It's already sent. But you said it's also impossible to, quote, make someone feel loved and supported if they believe they are unlovable and don't deserve support. Their beliefs will filter out and discard all evidence to the contrary. I can't disagree with you. If I were to rewrite this newsletter, I would probably say something just like that. So after rereading the line I wrote, which was, any one person can make another person feel loved and supported too, I might reword that. So David, that was an excellent observation on your part. I love that the Overwhelmed Brain audience is brilliant and they can point these things out and we can have a great discussion on these topics, because this is a great discussion as far as I'm concerned. And I think you're right, David. It is impossible to make someone feel loved and supported. And my only support of the way I wrote it is that when you adopt the philosophy to be loving and supportive toward everyone, and if everyone was like that to everyone else, that eventually that feeling of being loved and supported will make its way through. Again, I'm not disagreeing with you. I do believe that when you have these filters that you're unlovable and don't deserve support, they usually come from people who can't love you in a healthy way and choose not to support you. And if those people never acted that way or acted suddenly loving and supportive, it is possible to change those filters. But for all intents and purposes, I'm going to agree with you. So there you have it. I disagree with the suffering is optional, even though that is the mantra by every spiritual person out there. But I've come to the conclusion that suffering is sometimes not optional and also helpful in certain circumstances. Just my view. Feel free to disagree, but these beliefs and perceptions have been helpful in my life, and maybe they'll be helpful for you too. If not, keep doing what works for you. That's all I care about. Thank you so much, David. Excellent letter. Excellent subject to talk about. I appreciate you. We'll be right back. Well, that's it. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Overwhelmed Brain. I want you to check out Casper.com/brain and use the promo code BRAIN to get $50 towards select mattresses. Terms and conditions apply. I know you're going to love what they have to offer. And thank you to the patron members supporting the show over at patron.theoverwhelmedbrain.com. Some of those supporters have been doing it for a long time. I appreciate you. If you'd like to show your support, head over to the patron site and choose your path. You're not only saying thank you and helping the show thrive and stay on the air, you'll also receive free workbooks and a ton of episodes that have never been released to the public. And if you want, you can also join the e-coaching program where I coach you through life's challenges via email. If you're into any or all of that, go to patron.theoverwhelmedbrain.com. And I want to tell you about the Meme Workbook. This is the ultimate emotional abuse assessment and healing tool. Go through the 200-point assessment to find out if and how much emotional abuse or manipulation may be happening in your relationship, then learn what you can do about it. I get a lot of feedback from those who've used the workbook to assess their relationship, and the number one thing I hear over and over again is how it finally put into words what they couldn't articulate before. One person said, "What an eye-opener." And another person said, "The Meme Workbook made me see that he is sneaky, a master liar, and has me second-guessing and not trusting my own judgment. I see narcissistic behavior that I've tried to pretend otherwise, and his manipulation when a family event is going on. He plays it to my family as if I were the one creating a rift, leaving himself appearing innocent and the victim." Yes, thank you for sharing that. I see this over and over again in emotionally abusive relationships where the victim is blamed for doing all the bad deeds when the abuser is actually setting them up to make the victim believe they are the ones causing the problem. So if you've not been able to identify exactly what's going on in your relationship, if you're having a difficult relationship like this, go to theoverwhelmedbrain.com/mean and check out the workbook. It may just save you from pulling out your hair. And finally, I'd like to thank Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com for some of the music transitions in The Overwhelmed Brain. And in closing, I want to talk about, someone wrote to me and asked me a question about perceiving his girlfriend in a way where she's like a trophy wife, where he said, I read the article about Judgment, the ultimate relationship destroyer, which is something I wrote like 2, maybe 3 years ago. I had an episode on Judgment, and talked about how I judged my wife repeatedly, and that was basically the destruction of our marriage, how I kept judging her and judging her. You know, when you judge somebody, they feel less and less safe to be around you every time you do it. So this letter writer said, you know, I get it, I understand it, but I still do it. And every now and then I keep thinking, I want this trophy wife, I want this trophy person. And I have these perceptions, and I know they're my fault, but I can't stop. It's a battle for me to move past them, he said. Well, let me just say this regarding that. When it comes to wanting your partner, your mate, to have a certain look, to stay attractive in your eyes, if I may say that, because that's kind of what this comes down to, right? I want my partner to stay attractive. I think you have to remember two very important things. One, are you a damn good catch yourself? Now, I say this because if you want your partner to watch every inch and eat healthy and have nothing but good habits, you better be pretty impeccable yourself. Because you have to show up on the scene as already being what you're judging. This is only part one. I'm not saying that you should judge. I'm saying that if you are in a place to judge, then you yourself better not be throwing those stones in your own glass house, if you know what I mean. In other words, if you want your partner to be the perfect weight and have the perfect hair and the perfect body or whatever it is, if it's very physical, then you better be showing up that way too. If you're drinking beer on the couch every night watching TV, not that there's a problem with that. I'm not making fun of people that do that. I'm just saying if you're not doing your best and you are in this judgmental space, then it can definitely be seen as hypocritical and you will probably not get too far. So that's one. Now, that doesn't make it right. I'm not saying that this is a healthy thing to do. You shouldn't be judging. But, you know, if you're doing it, then you better show up as impeccable. For example, when I finally healed from my own judgments toward the people I was with, I had to come to realizations in myself that I was far from perfect. And coming to that realization made me more humble and made me feel very grateful that anyone would want to be with me. So I think that's important to realize that, wow, this person spends time with me when they could be spending time with anyone else, but they choose to spend time with me. This person chooses to take their time that they could do anything they want in their life, but instead spends their time with me. That is a privilege. That is something that I don't take for granted. I appreciate this because I am far from perfect, and that keeps me humble. So that's one. The second part of this is looking at judgment as a way to not address what you need to address in yourself. Because judgment is very externally based. It is about someone else and what they need to do to change for you. And this is something that was so vital for me to learn when I was married and as my marriage was ending, is that I was so focused on her changing for me that when she changed for me, our lives would be perfect. And every time she didn't change for me, which was every day because I was expecting way too much, I became disappointed. So essentially, I was creating my own misery. Because she wasn't changing, I judged her for not changing. I didn't look at my own stuff. I was so focused on everything outside of me that what really needed addressing was me. When I came to that realization that every judgment you have is your lack of acceptance for someone else inside of you, whatever that means. That could mean something that you need to heal from. That could mean something that you need to address, something stuck in your subconscious, your psyche, that you need to visit, which means you need to focus on yourself, which means you may not be mentally prepared or mentally available for a relationship. This is another realization I had when I was married, is that I came to a point where I finally understood that I was not mentally available, mentally prepared for a relationship. Because a relationship involves supporting someone else through thick and thin, through supporting their happiness, supporting their path, supporting their journey. Even when you can't agree with their journey, even when their journey doesn't line up with your journey, even when their values don't line up with your values. That doesn't mean you have to stay with them. I'm just saying, really loving someone is supporting their path to happiness. When you can support someone else's path to happiness, that is really unconditional love. But their path may not align with your path. Their values, what they find important in life, may not be important to you. So you have to be really clear in yourself what you find of importance in your life, and see if you have the space inside of you to support your partner's path in life as well. Because your partner may be on a destructive path. Maybe your partner is an addict, like I was talking about in the first segment. If your partner's addicted and you don't like it, yet you stay with them and you complain about it and you judge them and you want them to change and they never do, and you are madder and madder every day, and they get upset because they can't help it, or they don't know any other way of dealing with problems, or they can't get off their addiction, yet you still complain about it. Do you stay hating what you're going through and wanting them to change, or do you get out of a relationship that is out of alignment with your values, that is out of alignment with what you want in your life? And that's where I'm going with this person who wrote the letter, is that when you know you have judgment issues and you are judging your partner and you are so externally focused on how they show up in your life and you want them to change, what really needs to happen, if you really love them, if you really support them, is you need to look at yourself and go, I can't show up the way you need me to show up in your life. That might mean you have to leave. I know that's bold. I know that's not always easy. But if you are focused on somebody else changing for you, then you may not be ready for this relationship. When I realized that I was toxic to my wife because I kept judging her, I chose to stay away. I chose to break it up. I mean, we were already separated. She had left me first. But when she wanted to stay friends, and when the divorce was happening and she wanted to continue talking to me, I realized that even though I was healed from judging her about her eating issues and things like that, I was still finding little ways to judge her and tell her what she needed to do. And that made me think, geez, I'm still wanting to control her in some ways. I need to break this off. I need to stop communicating with her. It was a tough decision because I wanted her to change for me. I wanted her to do the things that I wanted her to do. Yet that is an unfair imposition to put on her. So to come to that realization in yourself that the person who judges is in a place of non-acceptance, and if you choose to focus on yourself and why you don't accept another person for the way they are and support their path, then you will start living for you, honoring yourself, honoring your values, and get out of a situation so that you don't make someone else's life miserable. If you're constantly judging and putting someone else down for what they do and expecting them to change, and even if they do change but they resent you because they're changing for you and not for them, the relationship doesn't go well. But if you choose to support them no matter what, and you're showing up in the best way possible that you can, it actually allows them and lets them keep their power to choose to show up in a, quote, better way, to choose to improve themselves, to choose to live life in accordance with their values, and even wanting to make small compromises and sacrifices for the sake of you, for the sake of the relationship. That's what happens when you let someone keep their power, is that they want to support you and they want to love you and they want to make you happy. If you try to control them, they don't want to make you happy. They want to get away from the control. And they wouldn't even mind making you upset because that's how you're making them. So every step you take toward judging and controlling them and trying to change them they're taking steps away from you. But every step you take to support them and love them, and no matter what happens in their life, you're there for them. And if they have challenges that they're dealing with, and if you show up and you say, I'm here if you need me, they're going to feel supported and they're going to be able to keep their power. You're not taking it away. And at that point, you'll end up with the best version of themselves because they will want to be better. They will want to continue improving themselves. Or not. They may not feel like they have to improve themselves and they want to be exactly who they are. And if that turns on your judgments and you can't handle that, then you are not mentally prepared or available for that relationship. And that's where your focus needs to be. When I realized I wasn't mentally prepared or available for my relationship with my wife, that caused me to go, if I don't like it, I should leave. I didn't like that option. I didn't like it so much that I realized, oh crap, I don't want to leave. I want to heal from this. And that's when I really dug in and realized, wow, I'm so lucky that she loves me for who I am. Even though I've been doing all this judging and wanting her to change, she's never wanted me to change. What am I doing? This is crazy. And this realization helped me overcome the judgments. Not only that, but that really did help me understand that I am not impeccable. I am not perfect. I am so lucky to have what I have. So to the person who wrote this letter, I hope this helps you understand my take on judgments and maybe help you understand where you need to be with all this. I can't exactly guide you on what to do, especially if you are so focused on physical appearance that you just can't get it out of your mind. Maybe you're not ready for a permanent relationship. Maybe you need to date until your wild oats are sowed. I don't know. But if you choose to be in a relationship with someone, and the stipulation for being in that relationship is to love and support and do the best you can to be there for them, and you're not doing that, then it's time to focus on yourself and come to a truth inside of you, how you can show up for someone else. If you can't show up as that loving and supporting, non-controlling person, then come to some realizations in that, come to an admittance, realize where you are, so that you can make the right choices for both of you. You don't want to exacerbate and continue misery. You want to nurture love and support and kindness, even when they do things that you may not agree with, because you can still support them even if you choose not to be with them. I hope this helps. If it doesn't, let me just ask you to keep your mind open so that you can step into your power. This will help you always be firm in your decisions and actions so that you can create the life you want. Always take steps to grow and evolve. You are powerful beyond measure. And above all, and this is something I absolutely know to be true about you, you are amazing.